expression for that, the pot calling the kettle.
But as my also an honored colleague, a fellow Reverend Doctor, today we're going to be talking about helping each other and also helping yourself work through grief and trauma. And it has been, for a lot of people, this has been like July has come in a very strong way. There's a lot of people going through a lot of stuff. And, you know, June wasn't exactly, you know, the teacup ride either. So we really, you know, we were talking, we got together, and we decided that it would be very cool to explore some tools and some ways that people could feel more empowered in, you know, not just dealing with grief and trauma themselves, but also in being able to help others in the best way that they can. So Reverend Dr. Childs is going to start off.
I love it. Well, let's breathe that all in. You are the infinity of giving and receiving. Let's breathe that in. As we receive, so we are capable of giving. And I wanted to start off with a letter that was shared with me many years ago. I just found it last night, trying to clean up some of my paperwork. And it's from a woman that I worked with. I had the privilege of working with. She and her husband survived the suicide of their son. And her husband was a firefighter at San Jose Fire Department. He was a fire captain, and he said, "Janet, I don't think we're going to make it." And a lot of times when I hear that, my stomach just drops. And I'm just going, oh boy, you know, please, God, Spirit, Creator, come and be with me now, because for this very quiet Hispanic firefighter to say, I don't think we're going to make it, was profound. She and her other son and her husband worked with us at the center. And then she had a friend who also asked her, what do I do, who had a friend in another state that had also survived the suicide death of their child. And this is the letter that she wrote, which I wanted to share with you, because it gave me a lot of wisdom and kind of captured the essence of what we're doing today. Dear Bud and Kathy, thank you for calling and talking with me. Please pass along our sincere condolence to your friends and let them know that they are not alone, and that if they need or want to talk to us, they can call us at any time. Also, please know that if there is anything Roberta and I can do to help another family through this awful tragedy of a child's suicide, we will. Here are a few suggestions of what to say or do to help your friends as they travel this unspeakable road of grief. Most important, don't worry that you're going to say or do the wrong thing. The worst thing that could happen already has. You can't fix it for them, but you can comfort them. Their entire family will benefit from your love and shared sorrow. I'm going to repeat that again. Their entire family will benefit from your love and shared sorrow. What we found during our grief is the most caring and honest words are, I am so sorry, he will be missed, or even, I don't know what to say. Every single message of his mention of his name, every Benjamin story, every memory is precious to us. If you knew their son, please don't worry about saying his name. It will be music to their ears and hearts. Their biggest fear is that he will be forgotten. There will never be a time when the family will not want to hear his name. Remember that this family is still probably pretty raw and traumatized by their son's death. The fact that you are asking questions on how to talk to them shows the depth of your caring at this time and your love for them. This will prove to be a very important part of their healing. Knowing that they can call upon you for support will lift a huge burden off of their shoulders. Once they know you are there for them, it will allow them to be honest and open in dealing with their grief. Expect a lot of tears. Having tissues and water available when you talk with them will be helpful for both of you. Hug them. But when you do, expect them to cry. That's okay. Cry with them. We found that when people cried with us, it expressed to us the deep empathy and let us know that Benjamin's death touched their hearts too. Ask them if a call would be helpful. Invite them to dinner once the tragedy-focused activity has subsided. Call them, drop them an email, a text, or a note, or offer some kind of distracting activity. I had to literally drag Roberta out of the house to go for a walk, and she cried the entire time. But we both needed to get out and move our bodies. Your invitations may not be accepted, but the fact that you offer them will not be forgotten. There is no easy conversation about suicide. It is always so shocking. If you're close to them, you may want to ask, do you want to tell me what happened? Let them tell you what they need to say. Talking was and is a critical component to the grieving and healing process. Listening may be your most caring gift to them. It was not helpful to us when people interpreted God's view on suicide.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Everyone has their own belief system, and if they are questioning theirs, it would be best for them to talk with their priest, pastor, or spiritual guide. It also wasn't helpful for us to hear others compare their pet dying or their elderly parent dying to Benjamin's suicide. A death is a death, yes, but losing a child to suicide will never be normal or easy to deal with. It's going to take them the rest of their lives to adjust to their son's death. It's a daily work in progress. I wish I could tell you a time limit or measure of time before they are back to normal. They will never be back to normal. They will need to cope in their own time. They are creating a new normal for their family. They are all changed forever, but eventually their raging grief will turn into sorrow and regret that's more tolerable and manageable. It's not unusual to hear parents speak of not being able or not wanting to live. Their whole world has been turned inside out, and it's really scary. If this type of talk persists, though, it might be a red flag, and you might want to encourage them to see a grief counselor, if they aren't already. We spent a lot of time at the Center for Living with Dying, and it saved us. I can't count how many times our counselor reminded us that we weren't going crazy. Thank you for being such compassionate, caring friends to us and to them. And I want us to just breathe that in for a moment. And when we think about grief, this is pretty intense grief, the loss of a child through suicide. However, all of our grief is intense. When a black man is wrongfully killed by a police officer, when police officers are wrongfully killed who did not do any harm to a citizen.
By anyone.
Right. And what happens is that we all have that grief and this grief. And so Dr. Ayleen and I want to make it really clear that our grief is the depth of our love. And what that means is we don't want you to do any comparison grief shopping, okay? Your grief is your grief. So the death of my Magic, who was my pet for 21 years, was my familiar, was actually more devastating because her death was sudden. It happened the day before my brother died, who died of a long-term illness. Now, I actually grieved more acutely for Magic because she was supposed to help me get through Ralphie's death. So I want to offer that we hold grief with open arms and with that compassionate Awareness that it is our natural response to any loss or change in our life. Any loss or change, even a positive change, can bring about grief. And how we can support ourselves and each other is doing the first step of acknowledging. And how we can support each other is by being a caring presence. And we're going to give it back to Reverend Dr. Ayleen.
That letter was just, I mean, nothing happens by coincidence. And the fact that you found that letter last night, you know, it's to know that, you know, people who were in their own grief could be able to express so beautifully and so eloquently both what it is that helped and what it was that didn't. And understanding that when dealing with people in grief, everybody means well. No one approaches someone who's grieving with the intention of doing any harm. And often it comes from that place of not knowing what to say. And sometimes the best, if you don't know what to say, then maybe the best thing to say is nothing. I recently was working with, I've been working with a lot of different people lately on a lot of different grief issues and, you know, deaths. And I was with someone and, you know, it was a death that occurred out of state. And before the person died, they had tried calling and you know, they kind of made a pest of themselves. And so people really weren't answering their calls. And I was driving her over to her ride to fly out to go to the funeral. And she was just livid at someone else. Well, that person should have answered his call, and he was trying to reach out to this other person, and da-da-da-da. And I said nothing. And I said, you know, all I said was, mm-hmm. And she went on a rant about how this other person should have reached back and how they should have answered the call. Now, I knew full well that she had received calls that she did not answer. But it wasn't important because that's not what she was dealing with inside of herself. Often the words that someone says are only the very tip of the iceberg of what's really going on underneath. And so I just sat there and it's like, uh-huh. Well, da-da-da-da-da. Uh-huh. Really? Yeah, I hear you. And then she got quiet and she said, but I didn't call him either. I should have called him back. I should have been there. And then the depth of the guilt that she was feeling. I mean, often we try to do a song and dance around guilt. We try to do a song and dance around things. And sometimes this morning I was speaking with someone who's had a friend, she just experienced a death in her life, and her friend just slammed her and, you know, made accusations at her and a lot of things. And, you know, and I asked her, it's like, well, you know, is your friend going through something? Is there been something that happened that could trigger this? And then she thought, she goes, oh, in a couple of days is the anniversary of her daughter's death, and she was there and she couldn't save her. What her friend was saying had nothing to do with her. It had nothing to do with the guy who died. It was about her trying to find a way to shift the energy of the pain of the guilt that she was carrying. And so, you know, often it really is. It's important while we are present with someone, also be present with the fact that what they're saying isn't necessarily what they're feeling. And one of the things that can come out, especially if someone becomes very attached, is, well, I can't talk to anyone but you. And so you're the recipient. You're holding the basket for all those words and all those feelings and all those emotions. I developed a saying that, you know, I will be putting on a sign in my office that said, I am happy to be a part of the answer, but I can't be the only answer. And especially for reverends, for caregivers, it is so easy to step into the bear trap of being the only answer. And then we start saying, oh, well, you know, I'm the one that they talk to. You know, they're not going to talk to anyone but me. That's ego. Because we all know that one person cannot carry a load of grief by themselves for someone, because then when it reaches that point where weeks turn into months and months turn into years, after a while suddenly the call comes up and it's like, you know what, I'll talk to her later. When we create community, when, you know, we hold that safe place, and then we say, okay, we're going to bring in someone. You know, Janet was referring to the warm handoff, but really it's like, you know, you just let their other hand hold on to someone. You can still be there. You can still, you know, go, okay, you know, I'm here, and we're going to get you more support. At the class, the last ministerial class, we were talking about counseling and ways of helping people and hearing people out. And I was offering scenarios. Well, if somebody came up to you and said this, what would your initial response be? And one of the people from the class said, well, honestly, my response would be to tell them I don't feel qualified to address that, and to make sure they get to somebody who is, which is perfect, because it's important for us to know where that line lies, to say, you know what, in my heart, I'm not qualified. I don't feel qualified to address this subject and to be there. You know, you can be there in a lot of different ways, but by making sure that you are not the only answer means that that person gets all the help that they need. And that's the important thing. Because the whole point is that grief is healthy, grief is normal. Grief allows us to survive what happens because it's a way out of it. There's a pathway through it. And by allowing as many people as possible to step in and help and support, that allows us to be able to really help somebody not just come through grief, but to be able to be more empowered on the other side of it. And so Reverend Dr. Jan is going to be coming up and talking about some of those techniques and tools to be able to manage that.
Could I add something to exactly what you're saying? I think that accepting who you truly are as a healer, as a counselor, and there are some things that will push your buttons, and that doesn't mean you're bad.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that. It just means you're human, and there's some things that happen.
Human? How can you be human? Aren't you a minister?
And if somebody is dealing with something that really does push a button for you, if it's a place where you're still working on your healing, it is best to find someone else to be able to help them, because sometimes empathy has light and shadow, and the shadow aspect is we get sucked in too.
Exactly, and you end up being the blind leading the blind.
And also, when that happens to you, my friends, we call it debriefing the debriefer. You need to be debriefed. In other words, you need to get support for you for what got touched in your backpack. And you've heard all of us, many of us in this room, have talked about the backpack of grief. It's not only dealing with the present event, it's whatever's in our backpack that may have gotten stimulated. So working with someone else could remind us of something in our backpack that maybe needs to be healed. And my personal belief is, this is just Janet Childs, I believe the universe brings us that person so that we can work on our backpack. I'll give you a good example. I had a client whose Aunt Betty was murdered by strangulation. When I was 11 years old, my Aunt Betty was murdered by strangulation.
Wow.
Now, I first thought, ooh, I don't even know if I should work with her. And that was a question I asked myself. And I went into meditation, talked with her about it, when I found out after the first session how closely, identified we were. And what I realized is that it gave me an opportunity. I'd done some healing with my aunt's homicide. I was not allowed to go to the funeral as an 11-year-old girl. It happened down in the LA area, and I was not allowed to go because my dad thought it would be too painful for me because I was very close to my aunt. So what I decided to do was I had done some work on emotionally. I'd written an unfinished business letter. And what came out of it, though, is I needed to do that second level of healing, which was I needed to go down to LA, find her gravesite, and be able to say goodbye to her. Bring her flowers, her favorite color was purple, just like me, and bring her flowers. She was a jazz singer, sang with Bessie Smith, and she was an amazing woman. and my father also played. And so, played music. And one of the things that happened with that is being able to do that for my Aunt Betty brought her, to me into my heart hotel, fully whole and healed. So I could let go of the pain of her death, which only happened once, and keep the love of her life that I could keep forever, even though. But if I had not had that client, I might not have been motivated to do that extra level, that second level of healing. So I invite us to call upon support, create a matrix of support for our family members, our loved ones that we're trying to support, our friends that we're trying to support in grief. Help them build their matrix of support, but also in that context, build our own matrix of support and say, okay, I need help. This one really touched me. I need help. After the San Bruno explosion, the San Mateo Critical Incident Stress Management Team, which responded to that incident, and we threw about 40 law enforcement and fire peers their way to help them deal with that explosion. But then they said, Janet, we're not going to use you at all because we're going to save you to debrief the debriefers. So that I didn't hear about the incident at all, I wasn't involved in it, I could be a fresh face. And so that's what we offer, to each of you. And we're going to give you a handout later that talks about the roller coaster of our emotions. And you know what? All of these are natural and normal. One of the things that happens when I give this to my clients, and when we do at the center, and then on the other side it has acknowledge, express, act, celebrate. We're going to give you tools for managing it. Okay? We give this at the end of the session. We don't give it at the beginning because we have to what? Be that quiet presence and let them tell us their story. You're doing a beautiful work on storytelling. My friends, we need to tell the details of our story. So a lot of what the first or second session when we're doing grief counseling is, we have a saying at the center that I created for myself. When in doubt, stick a sock in it. Okay, if I'm wondering what to say, stick a sock in it. And my wonderful responder friend made me a t-shirt that has a little doggy. I couldn't find it today, I'm sorry. Has a little doggy holding a sock, and it says, when in doubt, stick a sock in it. And it's just a reminder to me that the default is to stick a sock in it. And just to be present. And by the way, my friends, silence with presence is our friend. Silence allows people to go deeper. It gives them permission. If we ask too many questions, which is one of my faults, I tend to want to ask questions, and I have to realize, let there be silence. Because when there's silence, it allows that person to go deeper into their own experience and express it in the way that they wish to express it in their own timing and in their own way. And all we have to do, as beautiful Dr. Ayleen did in the car, all she did for her friend was be quiet and drive the car and be right beside her and present while she worked through her own dynamic of awareness. Because the key thing about grief is that we have to have some meaning from it. We are meaning-making creatures. And that's why we have the action step, acknowledge, express, act. We have to help people create meaning. And one of the ways that we can do that is allow them to process that meaning and what might be most meaningful for them. So just recently, last week, I don't know if any of you have heard of the Erskine fire, the Kern River Valley fire.
Yeah.
Okay, I've been down there all last week working with firefighters, working with folks from Cal Water, who were first responders as well, trying to get the water up so that the firefighters could have water. It was a raging fire that took over completely. It was incredibly, it was amazing. I mean, how quickly, and the firefighters were going, we didn't have a chance to do anything. And it was very arbitrary. So a house would be standing fully intact, and then two houses on either side razed to the ground. I mean, nothing, not even a chimney. And so it was very hard on the community, and it's a pretty poor community anyway. People living in the country, in the mountains, a lot of them didn't have insurance, so just many lost everything. And was working with the Cal Water Debriefing, and when I asked, I said, what's the hardest for you? And they said, giving out the gift cards to the people who had lost everything. They said, give me a pump to fix, give me a fire to go through to get to that water tank. Give me anything, Janet, but being with those people who had lost everything and then who were so grateful. That's what broke our hearts. And so at the end, I said, well, you guys have already started some action steps. And I said, on our team, we have a philosophy about the candle. And one of our firefighters brought a candle to one of our meetings, and it's kind of our tradition. We bring a candle to people that we want to honor for all the work you did. I said, so who smokes? And so this one, I mean, that's how you're going to find who's got the matches, right? Now, these are all rough and tumble construction guys, okay? And they're going, and I told them, I said, by the way, you're not going to get the touchy-feely, I won't use the other words that I use, but you're not going to get the touchy-feely, we're just going to be real. We can't fix it, we can't do anything, but we find that getting you together helps. So, the biggest, baddest, oldest, cow water guy stands up. He said, I'll light the candle. So he lights it. And so typically we have people say an intention or whatever, but something told me to shut up. And that I'm just sharing with you. This is, again, something that I learned just this week. And I said, I gave him the candle, but gave him the matches. He lit the candle. He had one of his friends hold the candle while he lit it. And then we just sat down and we had a moment of quiet. I didn't say a word. And he goes, well, what are we going to do with this candle? And he said, I know what we're going to do with it. We're going to pass it around. And we're going to have everyone touch this candle and give energy to our community. Is that powerful?
Yeah.
I'm just sitting there, chills are going up and down. And the message for me was, Janet, when in doubt, stick a sock in it. Exactly. So we wanted to talk about needs and don't needs really quickly. But one of the things that we don't need is we don't need platitudes. We don't need cliches. We do need for people to acknowledge. Now, how can we acknowledge? What are some ways we can say it? And Dr. Ayleen and I are going to just kind of play back and forth with needs and don't needs. So I just looked at the time and realized, blah, 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 I've been talking.
Okay. And we started late. So.
Right. So this is the deal. What I need is, this sucks. My heart goes out to you. That really helps. Or this sucks. I mean, if someone says to me, this sucks, after Magic died, one of the emails I got was, this sucks that Magic died before Ralphie died. My heart is with you. And then I had another email that said, oh, Magic had to go to heaven to welcome Ralphie. That's why Magic died. And by the way, I remember when my dog Buffy died. Da, 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 da. I don't give a shit about Buffy. Okay, at that point, when I'm in my grief, I don't want to hear the war stories.
Which is, really, the instinct is to show that you can kind of grasp what they're going through, which in all honesty, you can't.
Exactly.
Because even if I lost my father, my sister, my mother, other family members, dear friends, and just because I lost my mom and I'm dealing with someone who lost their mom, we're not going to have the exact same experience because those were two different women.
Yeah.
Our relationships with them were different. So it's, it's that desire to, we'll see, I can empathize with you. You can demonstrate you can empathize without saying a word.
And think about this, as Dr. Ayleen was saying that, I know how you feel, very different than saying I can relate to what you're going through.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? They're saying the same thing, aren't they? But one is what we need and one is what we don't need.
Yeah,
Right.
and just the phrase, I hear you, because there's a lot of power in that.
Yeah.
I hear you. Inviting them to, it's like if there's something they want to talk about it, give details. If they don't bring up details, don't ask for them.
Can I mention something?
Yes.
I have found so many times when people are going through things, and somebody will say, is it okay if I hold your hand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think that is so powerful, because when people are going through something, sometimes they don't want to be touched. But it's okay to just ask, is it okay if I go?
Exactly.
When in doubt, ask and give choice.
Yeah.
Ask and give choice. And in fact, we're going to give you a little handout, all of you, on your caring presence and some things to say or not to say. That's an excellent thing
Yeah.
to do. Give choice wherever
Yeah.
you can.
And what we all have to remember as each death is individual to that person.
Right.
They're never the same. And going through it
Yeah.
myself, I lost in 1999 about 500 over plus friends and associates to AIDS.
Mm-hmm.
That was the hardest year I ever lived. And nobody could be consoled. No, it was just a lot of people to lose. And I couldn't be consoled. There was nothing you could say to me that would irritate me. And it was, why are you so crabby? I said, I don't know.
Yeah. And the thing is that, you know, what is the second stage of grief? Is anger. You know, and
And
as
think of them as dimensions rather than stages
Yeah.
that follow each
Yeah,
other.
and then you never know how it's going to hit you. Because I was going through that all, and then a friend of mine, very good friend, committed suicide. Wow, talk about getting broadsided.
yeah. You know, it's
Yeah.
stuff stacks up, and
Yeah.
sometimes it seems that it goes in clumps, and it's like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
really?
And
You
I-
hate to pick up the phone because it's like, I know it's going to be bad news. And when you're dealing with someone who has had multiple levels, each one is unique. Each one is, you know, it's like, well, you know, they've had several deaths in their life, so, you know, they're kind of used to it by now. I actually had somebody say that to me. Well, you've had a lot of death in your life, so you must be used to it.
Oh.
Wow, seriously?
I said, no.
You don't get used to it.
No.
And you can, you know, while it changes your world, the world you knew is gone, the world that person knows is gone, and you can build a new one.
That's right.
And it can go into that place, as was eloquently put in that letter, that it becomes just, you know, grief becomes sadness. Sadness becomes a memory that makes you smile, that makes you realize that your life was so much better for that person being in it. And to be able to have that joy that can never be taken from you.
Yeah.
So it really is so important to realize that wherever somebody is at in their grief, that's just where they're at in that moment.
Yeah.
And, you know, like she said, you know, pay attention to the red flags. If they're continuously talking about, you know, something, realize that you're in over your head. And know when it's time to call in and say, you know what, I really think that, you know, you need to speak to somebody. I will go with you. I'm really worried about you. You can use those phrases, and you know, sometimes it's in talking with people, we kind of make it about ourselves. It's like, wow, you know, I really wanted to be there for you. And sometimes people will withdraw. They don't want to have somebody close. Some people process in a very solitary way. And, you know, it's hard when you're kind of made wrong for doing that. Just let people handle it because they know you're there. If, you know, they may not answer your emails, they may not answer your texts, they may not answer your phone calls, but they know you're there. They know that you're thinking of them. They know you're just a phone call away. And, you know, sometimes they just have to process it that way, and then they reach out when they're ready.
Well, and a beautiful example is that's where I became a fan of text, and I never thought I would say I like textile, but it's one of the most non-invasive ways we can tell someone that we're reaching out to them and we're thinking about them, and they don't have to respond, but they have the visual connection. They can see our text and feel our love. And we'd also like to offer that 2 questions are very helpful. What's hitting you the hardest right now? Because if you're overwhelmed with many different aspects of your grief all at once, it can feel overwhelming and chaotic. But saying, what's hitting you the hardest right now? And then the next question is, what do you need right now to get through it? And let you and I explore together what might make it a little teeny bit easier. Okay, so they don't know what they need. Because when you're in over your head, you don't know what you need. But if you can identify what's hitting you the hardest, you're starting to move from out of control to in control.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And you're starting that journey of, okay, survivorship. I'm gonna make some meaning out of this. And it can bring us to the fact that how precious love is, and how we're gonna say our I love yous, how we're going to reach out, how we're going to, it can change, grief can change our lives for the better. We can realize how precious life is. And my friends, we can also realize that to do this in community means that we are not isolated, we're not out of control, we're in control, we're making meaning. Though we're not fixing the pain, we're helping making meaning from it, and we're building the new normal together as a community. So when in doubt, what is it?
Put a sock in it.
And be there as your caring presence, be honest, give choice, and avoid talking about your own war stories.
And ask permission.
Yes.
Always
Yes.
ask permission.
Yes. I was at a hospital just real quickly, and I would put my foot, I'd ask permission to sit next to this young man whose father had been murdered. And he let me sit down, and he was kind of quiet, and I didn't push him, and I just said, you know, this sucks, you know, my heart just goes out. And I said, and so he goes, yeah. He goes, I don't know what I'm gonna do. That's my papa, that's my daddy. So then I just put my foot next to his foot. I didn't touch it. And then he put his foot next to my foot so that we were touching. So it's like giving that choice, that outreach, and then letting them meet us there. You know, so that they have the choice and the power to do what they need to do.
It's best to find out what they need
Right.
Yeah.
to help, that will help, as opposed to, well, this person is upset, I need to hug them. Or this person is upset, I need to do this. What we think, what we want, what we need is unimportant in that moment. It's about how can I be the best container for what this person has to endure. So,
Don't tell people get over it.
No.
yeah,
You know, oh, it's been 3 months already, aren't you over it by now? I mean, that's the part, that's the
Yeah.
part of that's just like so
Yeah.
me.
you know, and the other part of that is it's like, oh, you know, don't think of the bad, think of the good. You know, just put positive energy behind it. You know, you can't, don't be sad. You know, I mean, anything that tells that person, yeah, you know, anything that tells that person that they need to feel another way other than what they're feeling. If they're gonna curse a blue streak
Right.
at that person, and they may
Right.
need to do that.
Exactly.
They may need to sit and go on a rant about how horrible that person is. Don't stop them. Go, oh, okay, tell me more.
That's a great thing to say, tell me more. And you know, it's like a dance, it's like the heartbeat, validating and then receiving. Tell
Yeah.
me more, validate, receive.
Yeah. Oh, you don't speak
Validate.
ill of the dead. You know, it's like, well, maybe if they were a jerk and you need to get that out somewhere, do it. Because it's not, their words are not what they feel. Their words are simply an expression of trying to move the energy.
Yeah.
Ultimately, they always get down to their hearts, which is where the best place for you to move them at.
Absolutely. We love you, my friends, and we want you to have that opportunity to get healed as you are bringing the healing to us.
Okay.
I don't know if it was mentioned by Ayleen. But one of the things that upset me when my mom passed is that some of her not so close friends were angry that they hadn't been notified.
Right.
And we were so overwhelmed and trying
Yeah.
to read her writing in her address book. I mean, it was such a challenge, and then to have people angry at us because we hadn't notified them. That was really difficult.
It's very difficult, and when that happens, my friends, as grieving people, unfortunately, we become the grief educators, don't we? So let people know that you did the best you could. Say, I'm sorry, you felt like, you know, we didn't notify you in time, and then just say that, you know, right now I'm in my grief, and I invite you to take care of yourself. I'm going to take care of myself. Do not take on their energy.
Yeah.
Because it's not yours. When you're in that kind of acute grief, you do not have the capacity to hold somebody else's, you know, upsetness or pissed offness or whatever. We need to be able to just let it go, let them have their experience, not take it on, and focus back on what do I need right now.
I'd like to share one quick thing. When my stepdad died, Dan, and my son was 5, and he walked up to my mom, who just lost the love of her life, and said, "Since Grandpa Dan is dead, can I have his boots?" And I was immediately going to, oh, you know, he didn't mean to say, you know, how you do it. And I just sat there, and my mom looked at him, and she said, "When you become man enough, you can have his boots." That's the greatest thing that I could have, that anybody could have said, you know. And sure enough, when he got to be 13, she gave me the boots, you know. So there was a whole connection. But I thought, if I had said anything, it wouldn't have been as powerful.
Exactly.
As allowing her a time. to say
Allowing her
Yeah.
to stand
And,
up for herself.
you know, and that's one of the things that, you know, can be offered to help. Is there anyone I can call? Would you like me to speak to anyone? And, you know, I can go through and make calls if you'd like. And that is a huge help. That is a huge, because when you're in it, you don't want to make the calls.
All right, my friends, do we have time for Ronnie to have his song?
Always.
Of course.
Ronnie, we miss you, our baby Ronnie, our Reverend
No,
Ronnie.
but you have to say it right.
That's the best.
Reverend Ronnie Grigsby, do you have a song for us?
We'll pass it back.
Getting up, that's a good sign.
Oh, that's right.
Oh.
Tell you what, why don't we pass the basket? Ronnie, is it okay if we pass the basket while you sing?
We'll be listening. Okay.
I think that will.
I like that shirt.
Don't you,
This is the Black Lives Matter t-shirt.
Yes.
I've worn this, I've worn it a lot of times, being the activist that I am, and that I profess to be. Sometimes saying things with your mouth don't get heard.
we all need that shirt.
Saying things with your body is heard. I asked a Caucasian gentleman one time, what do you do when a policeman stops you? He says, I roll down my window. I talked to the policeman, I said, okay, this is what happens when a policeman stops me. Before the policeman stops me, I roll down my window. I take my wallet out of my pocket and I lay it on my lap. I put both hands on the wheel. And when the policeman comes up to me, I look at him very sternly and ask him, how can I help you? Do you see the difference? The reason why I do that is because policemen in different parts of the country has taken the fact that a man of African descent, a man of Hispanic descent, made a move that wasn't to that police officer a move that he should have made and have taken his life. So this t-shirt is very serious. And since we're talking about serious things this morning, one thing that we did not do was the sacrament of giving. Can we do that?
Yes, thank you.
Giving to the ministry from which we receive our spiritual support and nurturing is an affirmation and consciousness of the truth that Spirit is the prospering power enriching every area of our lives. I had the chance of visiting the Lorraine Motel while I was away. I went to Memphis and Louisiana and all kinds of fun places. And the Lorraine Motel was the motel that Dr. Martin Luther King was in when he was assassinated. So, I'm going to sing Dr. Martin Luther King's favorite song this morning. And if your spirituality doesn't take you where my spirituality takes me, then God bless you. You deal with it. The Bible says this: everyone must work out their own salvation. Where my spirituality takes me is a place that your spirituality may never take you, but this is my life and my spirituality. Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. I am tired, I am weak, I am worn through the storm, through the night. Lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, and lead me on. When my ways grow drear, precious Lord, hold me near. When my life is almost gone, at the river here I stand. Guide my feet, hold my hand, take my hand, precious Lord, lead your child on.
Yes, now.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Somebody say amen. Thank you, Ronnie.
Thank you so much, Ronnie. So, we've come to the place where we get up and hold hands and form a circle.